Right now, 75% of customers are judging your company's credibility based on the logo design alone. Kind of scary, right? As a professional graphic designer with over 20 years experience, I have seen some pretty bad logos. In fact, I've probably created some of them at one point in my career. So today, I'm going to show you how to avoid making the 7 biggest mistakes with your logo design that's going to make you look cheap, amateur, and drive customers away before they even give you a chance. Starting things off with mistake number 1 is only having one version of your logo. And a lot of people find that mistake shocking, because how could having one version of your logo be a mistake? I thought, isn't a logo supposed to be recognizable by everyone? Wouldn't having multiple versions of a logo be bad for the brand? Yes and no. Picture this. You have a gorgeous wide logo, but as soon as you go to shrink it down to fit into a social media profile, it's basically unreadable. And that's because most logos are not one size fits all. And while having a logo that's designed to fit within a square ratio is good practice, it's not always probable. The fact is, different platforms and different media are going to need different shapes and sizes. And a horizontal banner logo won't always work in a circle or a square format. Plus, when you go to shrink something down like that, you can lose the clarity and the layout can start to look weird because it's not in proportion. And if you only have one layout, then you might be hesitant to using your logo in certain places because it just doesn't fit well. So instead, I always recommend that you create multiple variations of your logo. This would include things like a horizontal version, a stacked or a square version, an icon only, a word mark. These are all good foundational logo variations to have. And this will make sure that you avoid running into any of those issues where your logo doesn't present 100%. Mistake number 2 is going overboard with effects. You know when you see those logos that have huge drop shadows, bright gradients, or 3D text that looks like it's straight from the early 2000s? Well, this can make your brand look dated instead of cool. And essentially, this starts a clock on how long your logo will last. Not only that, but scaling issues like 3D edges or heavy gradients can get blurry at smaller sizes. These effects are also terrible for reproduction and consistency. So when you go to put your logo on a t-shirt or a brochure, it's gonna replicate different every time. That's why you always see logos in a flat form. Using tiny hints of gradients can be classy, but having big flashy 3D text might be a little too much. And you always want to check your legibility in black and white. If it's still readable without color or fancy effects, then you're perfect. Because if it works in black and white, then it's going to work everywhere. Mistake number 3 is poor font choices. Fonts are basically the voice of your brand. And a lot of times I see logos with fonts that are mismatched to their actual personality. And when you do that, you start to shout the wrong message at your customers. So for example, a playful kids brand like Lego, if they were to use a serious typeface, it would just feel off. Or maybe you're using a fancy script or a decorative font, and it's really hard to read when it's scaled down to smaller sizes. You also want to avoid pairing a complicated font with an icon that's also busy, because if you do, they're going to compete for attention. When it comes to fonts, you want to match the mood. Either way, pick a font that's going to reflect that vibe. Are you going for a fun and playful look? Or are you trying to be more formal and professional? And this mistake is the worst of all. Not clicking the like and subscribe button. Ugh. Mistake number 4 is all about color usage. I either see a rainbow of colors that makes everything look chaotic, or not enough contrast, which makes your text practically invisible. Either way, you're making people's eyes work way too hard. When you have every color in the book at your logo, it will overwhelm the viewer. It's way better to limit your palette to 1 to 3 main brand colors for a clean and memorable look. And contrast is king. When you make sure that your text or your icons visibly stand out against the background, your customers will be able to recognize it at a quick glance. And remember, colors can look different on a phone versus a printed piece, so always test them accordingly. Let's talk about mistake number 5, and this is probably the one I see a lot. And that's using stock icons or clip art. Yes, I'm talking to the Canva users here. When you grab a free icon off of the web, it sounds really convenient. But there is a gigantic catch to this. You don't own that design, and plenty of other businesses are using the exact same design. And when customers see it and think, haven't I seen that logo somewhere else? Guess what happens? It cheapens your brand and makes your company look less professional. You also can't trademark or protect your visuals. Mistake number 6 is trying to put way too much detail into a logo. And I think that happens because a lot of people believe that their logo is supposed to tell their whole story. But in fact, it's only supposed to be a small little snippet of what it stands for. Because when you put way too much detail into a logo, you can run into a lot of issues. At smaller sizes, or when it's being reproduced through print, you're going to lose a lot of that detail. And this is where things start to look muddy. You want your logo to be super recognizable at a glance. And when there's too much information, your customers get overloaded and just decide to go on to the next thing. Instead of trying to tell your whole story, focus on one main idea. Maybe it's a single shape, or a letter, or a symbol. Let that do the heavy lifting. The best practice is to try and remove all the unnecessary details while still keeping personality intact. And mistake number 7 is the complete counterpart to mistake number 6. And that's having a logo that looks way too generic. It's a balancing act. You want to have a logo that stands out from your competition, but you also don't want it to be too overwhelming for your customers. So when you have a logo that doesn't have any personality, it's like a flavorless meal. It'll get the job done, but it's not really enjoyable and it's very forgettable. And because of that, you won't establish an emotional connection with your customer. Because if your logo looks like a template that anyone can download, then people won't have any reason to recall it. Plus, your audience may be confused with another brand when it looks so similar. Even the smallest little detail in a letter or a symbol can help make you look one of one. And one of the most common mistakes that I see with this is when a brand tries to make their logo be a direct reflection of what their product or their service is. So if you're a coffee company, you don't need to show a cup of coffee. Example, Starbucks. And the McDonald's logo has nothing to do with selling burgers. And the Apple logo has nothing to do with technology. Instead, they focus on a cornerstone concept. And this is a much better way to create a unique logo that feels true to your origin story. But even if you avoid all 7 of these mistakes, there's one thing that you need to make sure you always have. And that is a vector file of your logo. This file extension ensures that your logo will always be 100% reproducible, sharp, and crisp no matter where it is. You can make it 10 feet wide, or you could shrink it down to 10 pixels. The quality will always be 100%. And if you found this video helpful in any way, go ahead, hit like and subscribe, and click on any of those other videos wherever they are on the screen. Thanks for watching.